Welcome to the Disco Project, episode 1. We're going to start with the Vulcan hello, because that's where it starts. Part of me, again, I wanted to do season 2 first and backtrack to season 1. Let's just do it. Let's go into season 1. Now, season 1 didn't leave the greatest impression on the first couple of views, but I've grown to appreciate a lot of it later on. So I think the magic with watching some new Trek, being the old school fan that I am, is when I first view it, my mind's just on, and it shouldn't be, but it's just part of who I am. It's on the continuity. I'm looking at this as a real place and time, and things that don't match stick out to the point where I can't see whatever the intention was. So for me, New Trek takes multiple views, because my first impression is, what's going on with that? That doesn't make any sense, whatever. And this happens more in Strange New Worlds when I watch it, because it was like, what are we doing with the Gorn? That doesn't make any sense. But I got to get that out of my system. And I get it out of my system just as a continuity geek, and I understand, and I need to remind myself, hey, this is a fictitious universe, all right? And I can always pull back from their quantum realities, and this is just part of it. Anybody who reads comic books, and if they should know that yes, this is an interpretation of a larger story, a franchise with different pieces that reflect the different eras that they're in. So I don't think there's a linear continuity to any of this. It is an interpretation of what we see, and that's what everything is an interpretation. That's what history is. I'm not satisfied just reading one biography of an individual. I have to read multiple biographies to get a larger sense of how the individual life is interpreted. That's what art is. That's the challenge, and that's what Star Trek is. So it's another continuing part of what's going on. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. So it's just not about continuity, and this doesn't match and that doesn't match. Who cares? All right? It's not like this is a sacred show. It's not like all these episodes are gold. Not in any Trek. All right? It's a TV show. You got me there. Vulcan hello. So it begins, and the cards aren't reflecting this. Well, no, it does begin this way, right? I can't remember now. So the first season, the first episode, does it begin with the Klingons initially? We don't have a Klingon card. It's all subtitled. It's all just to put you in this alien atmosphere, because we got plenty of Klingons. I was never a big fan of Klingons, but we're in the Klingon atmosphere right away. And, you have to consider the time and space where this was produced, in the conflict going on and continuing to happen on our own planet. And that's based on previous years of conflict. So, coming out of the long 90s, that led to what we see. Long 90s really is, 1988 to 2001. Or 1989. You want to do it, fall of the Berlin Wall, 88 and 89, it's 80, excuse me. So long 90s, 89 to September 11th. And then that's when our foreign policy interests change, and then it becomes this. And so, Trek is always reflecting the time. I don't have to go through this. Plenty have said this better than I have, but it embedded into the originality of Trek is just the 60s New Left ethos, and subsequent interpretations of Trek have somewhat embraced, but a lot of times challenged it, especially Deep Space Nine. We're challenging it again, and why not? And so the perspective here, if we begin just with the Klingons and subtitles, we're immersed in a culture that's all about its identity, and in a way, it's its own racialized identity. So it does get sticky politically, but we're into it, because we have to contrast that with the surface idealism of the United Federation of Planets, and that's always a stand-in for U.S. policy. And I'm not just bringing this out of the ether. I mean, this is what academic scholarship of Trek is like. Okay, so, basically, if the UFP is a stand-in for the U.S. and its foreign policy, and the contradiction between the practical realities of realpolitik and, what we do with foreign policy versus the idealism of our mission, we certainly, Deep Space Nine problematizes quite a bit, and so does Discovery initially. But it also begins with representation, which is key, because now we have a lot more representation of two non-white female leadership roles at the beginning of the show, discussing what? Discussing the very mission of the Federation in the first place as they walk around and create the Arrowhead. So, I mean, is it obvious? Are they hitting us over the head with it? Yeah, maybe, but maybe we live in a place where we need to be hit over the head. So, this is established right away. This is who we are. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. This is the challenge. So we have Captain Georgiou and Michael Berman, and my cat is just wanting attention over here. We have Georgiou and Berman discussing the ethics of the Federation and why they're there to help. And that establishes right away the rifts we're about to see in the rest of the show. So maybe the cards will reveal that too. I'm not going to go through this whole stack of cards. I feel like I've done enough right here. There's going to be a card. It might be a card at a time. Maybe a few more cards. But Vulcan Hello, it establishes right away. Here's what's happening. I'm going to go take care of my cat. But this is just how I'm gonna start, and now I'm gonna begin. Maybe I'm still not that far away. This is difficult. There's a lot with disco, and it's all good, and it's challenging. And the more I talk about it out loud, to get some of the thoughts I've just internalized out of my system, I think it's the most challenging version of Trek out there. I mean, Deep Space Nine, we always like to think was, and it certainly is, but this one does something else, and it's all for the better too. So to be continued.